Okay, there we go. Okay, so back to the show. We are recording, and I would like to now introduce Kathy Gordon, who is our MC for the evening. So Kathy will be the voice in between all of our tellers and will provide you with all the background information as they begin. Kathy is a member of the Asheville Storytelling Circle and is currently, and has been for many years and worn many hats. She's currently serving as the Vice President of Events. And I wanted to share this or not, but when we were setting up our tech check, she let us know that her 9-year-old grandson helped her set up tonight. So I think that was a wonderful story about how technology is, sometimes you got to go to your younger cousin or grandson or daughter or child. So anyway, we're happy that you're here, Kathy, and I will turn it over to you. And you go ahead and unmute yourself. And
hey everybody, welcome tonight. This is New Beginnings with the Asheville Storytelling Circle. We're a wonderful group and we hope you can come visit us sometime. We're a Zoom right now, but we're hopefully we'll get to meet together soon. I want to thank you, Hannah, for all the work you've done to get us here. Also, Catherine Frank is the Executive Director of OLLI. Thank her. And everybody else at OLLI, thank you so much. Thank you for coming tonight. Hannah Ferguel, we couldn't have done this without you. And Chuck Fink, yay. And let's take a minute. Wasn't today a glorious sunshiny day? Wow, it was wonderful. All righty, our first teller is David Sharp. And David Sharp is fairly new to the Storytelling Circle, but he's not new to storytelling by any means. He grew up right here in Asheville, and he was greatly influenced by the mountains, our culture, and our bears. How about that? He's taught at a wilderness camp for children. He studied in New England. He worked with indigenous people, but the best one that he told me about was that he used to work as a stilt dancer. Everybody, let's welcome David to our stage.
Thank you. I'm honored tonight to share with you 2 indigenous stories that come from Turtle Island. They're from long ago when the humans first came into the world. The first is a story, Grandma Mole. I don't know what tribe this is from. I learned it from Brian Fox Ellis. It came from a medicine wood gathering with Sun Bear. Grandma Mole. In the beginning, Gitche Manito was alone in space, creator. She was all that there was. And anything that she thought about, she could conjure into being. So the first thing she created was a ball of fire, and she threw that first star out into space. And she threw other stars in all directions and scattered the universe filled with stars. And then she came back and looked at our sun. And she thought of something that she could build her dreams on, and she took from her belly and she threw the earth spinning around the sun and the other planets around the solar system, around the other galaxies. And she came back and she looked at our earth. And as she looked at the earth, she thought of all the dreams and possibilities of what she wanted to create there. Why, it was tears of joy and laughter. They began to shower down. And as those tears hit the earth, they rose up in steam and fell back down and rose up and fell back down. And they cooled the earth. And that water flowed upon the earth, the rivers, into lakes, into oceans. And at one point, the oceans covered all of the land. So much that the continents moved about, they'd come into each other and mountains would form and they'd spread back out. The land shaped itself, playing a game of tag. She reached into the ocean and out of her fingers, the animals began to come, the one-celled animals, the starfish, the mollusk, the fish, the whale. She spread her hands across the earth and the grasses began to grow up, the flowering plants, the giant trees, the sequoias, the flowering dogwoods. She started to scatter animals about. She threw all the insects which scattered all over the world. And then she took the frog, the salamander, the raccoon, the possum, the coyote, the bear, the buffalo, the eagle. She put them out. She was about to put the two-legged animal on the earth. And she stopped. She put it back in her pocket. She said, before I put this two-legged on the earth, I need to find a place to hide a part of myself where those two-leggeds that want to take advantage of the earth will never think to find it. But those that want to help with creation, they will always know where it is. She called a circle of animals together. By the shore, she could look out to the sea, she could look out to the land, and she explained, these two-leggeds, some of them are going to be wonderful, curious, creative, they will help with creation, and some will think they're in control and try to take care of it. So before they're released, I need to hide a part of myself where those two-leggeds that want to help with creation will always know to find it. But those that want to take advantage will never think to find it there. Bear came forward. Oh, Gitchi-Manitou, Gitchi-Manitou, give me that part. I will take it down to the heart of the mountain. I will hide it there. Gitchi-Manitou, she looked at Whale and said, Whale, not Whale, she looked at Bear, said, Bear, the heart of the mountain, it won't be safe. They'll go down to dig up coal, uranium, to find little shiny rocks. Their greed, their curiosity, the heart of the mountain won't be safe. Bear was stunned, and Whale swam forward. Gitchi-Manitou, Gitchi-Manitou, give me that part. Give me that part and I will swim it down, 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 and I will put it on the bottom of the sea. Gitchi-Manitou, she said, no, Whale. I don't know how to tell you with your eyes holding all the ocean that the bottom of the sea, it won't be safe. They'll build platforms and they'll reach down to pull up the black blood of the Earth Mother. They'll go down in little things that look like rocks just to see what's there, their greed, their curiosity. It won't be safe. The eagle flew forward. Cheep! Gitchi-Manitou, give me that part. Give me that part and I will fly it higher, higher. I will put it on the moon. Gitchi-Manitou, she shook her head. Now, how many of you were here when that first craft landed on the moon? You remember? The eagle has landed. Now, perhaps NASA knew about this story. Maybe Gitchi-Manitou, she certainly knew about NASA, and there would be those that wanted to help with creation and those that wanted to take advantage. She looked around at the circle and said, help me find a place. And it was quiet. There wasn't a sound. As she looked around, she waited. And there was a scratching sound at her feet. She looked down. What? There was Grandma Mole peeking up from the ground. Grandma Mole was blind, but she could smell a wolf, a fox, bobcat, eagles. They all like to eat moles. Yeah, Grandma Mole. Grandma Mole, don't go away. Here, come up. Yeah. Oh, just whisper it to me. It's a silly idea. I know those are the best. Oh, just take the part and, oh, yes, hide it inside the two-leggeds. What a great idea. So with the first two-legged child born into the world, Gitchi-Manitou, she took a part of herself and she put it right into their own heart. She looked at the new dreams, new visions that they would bring, and she turned that child loose. And the next child, she took a part of herself and thought and admired that child and turned it loose. And with each child born into the world, with you, with me, Gitchi-Manitou took a part of herself and put it inside our hearts, knowing that we come with new dreams and new possibilities of what this world will be. So when we're feeling sad, when we're feeling angry, frustrated, alone, to know that Creator's with us, we don't need to go to the heart of the mountain, to the bottom of the sea, or to the moon. We just need to look inside our own hearts. That's the story of Grandma Mole. And I'm going to tell one more story. That's a time long ago. This is the origin of wild strawberries. Have you ever been in an argument? You know, you knew you were right. You couldn't remember what you were arguing about, but you knew you were right. It was that type of argument. First man and first woman. That argument went on. It got to where they couldn't say words. They just kind of sputter at each other. Then they just make faces at each other. And then it got to where they would even see the fires where they were sleeping and head the other way. So they didn't see each other at all for a long time. This went on from the spring to the summer to the fall, and it was a very long winter. As spring was starting to come, first man, he was walking through the melting snow and he came upon Creator, said, Creator, please help me. I've been trying to follow first woman's footsteps, and anytime I see her, she runs away. I need something to help me. We've been in an argument and I can't remember what we're arguing about. I need help. I'm trying to I'm trying to apologize. And Creator thought about this. He thought about all the work that had gone into the humans. It would be an experiment that was just let go, like some other experiments, but maybe Creator decided to help. So as first woman was walking through the woods, in front of her, an apple tree sprang up and it had red apples. And, they were so tasty. They were so good while she was eating them. And she noticed the first man was coming behind. So she picked a bunch and hurried away, eating the apples, throwing the cores behind. First man came doing the same thing, eating, chasing after her. And as she was going, a pear tree sprang up in front of her. And those pears, they were even sweeter than the apples. And as she was eating them, she noticed first man coming and she scattered the pears. And we got pears around. Well, this argument kept going. There were peaches, the juice running down their face. There were plums, so sweet. There were pineapples. There were kiwis. There were coconuts. There were dates. This argument traveled all over the world. And as it made its way back into Turtle Island, Creator realized that he needed to get something that would slow first woman down. He created the blueberry bush. Those blueberries were so tasty. Little berries, you had to eat lots of them and it was hard to wiggle through. But first woman, she managed to wiggle through and pick a whole bunch of blueberries and scatter them about, and first man wiggled behind her. Well, then came the raspberries. They grabbed onto her arms. They grabbed onto her clothing. They left little scratches, but she ate those sweet berries and she wandered on. And then something that would grab on even harder, the blackberries. They drew blood. And the blood was dripping on her arms as she ate those berries, so sweet. And first man coming behind, she was going, he was chasing, and they came into a field, a big green field with little tiny red berries. Wild strawberries. Now, if you've never eaten a wild strawberry, you take a California strawberry and you squeeze it all down into the tip of your finger. You add a little bit extra flavor and sweetness, and they're so sweet, and you have to crawl on the ground to pick them. Why, first woman was picking those strawberries, crawling in one direction, and first man was eating, crawling after her. And he'd go around to the other side and start crawling, and she would crawl away, and he'd come around and she would crawl away, and he looked at Creator and said, Creator, help me. And Creator said, I don't know what to do. I've done everything I know how. For the first time, first man had to think for himself. He was scared, but he came up with an idea. He started picking wild strawberries until he made a huge pile that it took both hands to pick up and hold. And he hid himself in the grass where the strawberries were there as first woman was coming up. She came across that pile and she took a bunch. What beautiful strawberries. And she ate them and she looked. And as she took the next bite, she noticed there was a finger and a wrist. She took a few more and she looked down and saw the elbow and shoulder and ate a few more. And as she was picking up the next bite of strawberries, she looked into the eyes of first man. They hadn't looked at each other in almost a year. And they just looked at each other for a while. And then first man said, I love you. I miss you. I don't know what we were arguing about. And as he was talking, she took some of those strawberries and she put them in his mouth. And he took some and put them in her mouth. And there was strawberry juice flowing. And this is a family show. So I can't tell you all that happened, but you're here and I'm here. And there's more humans that are here on this planet. So it worked. The wild strawberries, from the teachings of the elders I worked with, they are a medicine to help us remember the secrets, the sweetness of life, and to let go of any resentments. So when we were born, we cried, and the world rejoiced. Live your life so that when you die, the world cries and you rejoice. So thank you very much. The origin of the wild strawberries.
Kathy, unmute yourself. Sorry, I muted you back. I snuck it in on while he was speaking.
Okay.
Thanks.
David. Wow, David, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. We've only started, everyone. Here we go. This is one of your own. This is Chuck Fink coming up. And he says he joined OLLI in March of 2009 after retiring from his other job. Later that year, he formed the Men's Wisdom Works, an OLLI special interest group for retired men. Today, he's got 17 groups totaling more than 170 men who work with the Men's Wisdom Group. Chuck took his first class at OLLI in storytelling in 2012. And it was over for him. He's been here ever since in the storytelling world. He's told personal stories in Asheville, Weaverville, and Jonesboro, Tennessee, the capital of storytelling for those of you who don't know. He teaches classes at OLLI on developing and telling personal stories. Chuck joined the Asheville Storytelling Circle in 2016. He has a radio show called Storyville, and that can be heard on WPVM FM 103.7, Wednesdays from 10 to 11 a.m. And if you don't catch it then, you can watch it on his YouTube page. Chuck Fink is glad he joined the Asheville Storytelling Circle, and we're very glad he did too. Here you are, Chuck. Your OLLI's very own Chuck Fink.
Thank you so much, Kathy. I really appreciate that introduction. And before I tell the story, I actually need to thank both Catherine, Frank, and Hannah and the staff of OLLI, because without them, I would not be able to tell the story that I'm about to tell. Retirement for many men, early retirement for many men, can be really catastrophic. It was for me. I don't know about other men, but I was suffering. Let me explain. My wife and I decided to retire when we were relatively young. I was 58, she was 56. She had been a university professor and an administrator for 31 years. And after seeing some of the changes coming down in academia, like helicopter parents, she decided it was time to hang them up. Well, I had my own business. It was a consulting firm and a leadership firm, and I figured I could take that anywhere. So we charged and we looked for a place and we found Asheville. Then when we got here, by the way, we decided that I would not travel for the first year or so until Cindy, my wife, got comfortable. So, moving to Asheville, let's see. Massage parlors? Yeah. Yoga studios? Yeah. But not so much on leadership development and management consulting. So I spiraled down. I went down and down, and I fell into a deep depression. So what do depressed men do when they first retire? We hang around the computer all of our waking hours. And my wife, Cindy, decided she wanted to get me away. But let me tell you something about my wife. She had developed a list of 37 things she was going to do in retirement. Within a month, all of them were crossed off, except for one, and that was home brewing. We moved to Asheville, Beer City, USA. Home brewing? Nah. One of those items, though, was starting a pet care business, dog walking. I remember she told the university president of her intention, and the president just looked at Cindy and said, So you could be dealing with a higher breed of animal. And she has. I too, though, had a list of 2 items, not 37, just 2, sulk and mope. And I was world class at both of them. Well, Cindy wanted to get me away from the computer because that's all you do when you're down and you're retired. You just hang around the computer, especially if you're a man. So she told me there was a program at the then North Carolina Center for Creative Retirement, now OLLI, and she wanted me to go. It was called Marketing to Boomers and Beyond. She wanted it for her business because she was starting it. She was a professor. She had no idea of how to run a business, how to market. So she dragged me. And when I'm there, I'm looking out the window thinking, gee, I wonder what the news, weather, and sports is on my computer. I started missing my computer. And then the keynote speaker was introduced, Rick Moody. Now, first of all, is that a great name for someone that's depressed? Moody? Well, that kind of got my attention, but it's what he said that really got my attention. It changed my life and lives of so many other men and their families. What he said was, when men and women retire, we all go through very similar experiences. However, he said, women handle those experiences so much better because women socially network so much better than men. Women personally disclose with comfort, where for men, it's not so comfortable. And then he said, women handle change better than men. I heard that it was like a bolt of electric shock therapy. I turned to my wife and I said, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start a men's group. So that was the starting point. And for the next several months, I did research. I read books, I interviewed people. And whenever I talked to people about my idea, especially men, this is what I would hear. Oh, it's a great idea. It's really needed, but it'll never work. Men are never going to open up and personally disclose. Well, I was getting a little down in the dumps, and then I found a resource that's been with me ever since. Women. Women helped me get this started, and they helped me support this. It's been great. And one woman in particular was Betty. Betty was also at that program, Marketing to Boomers and Beyond, but I met her at another event. I pitched my idea, and she just was all over it. She said, that is a great idea. You got to go forward. And she got together, about 7 or 8 nonprofit executives, all women, and I pitched my idea. They said it was fantastic. It's so needed. You got to go do it. They also suggested ideas like making it a research project. That's not what I wanted. But with their enthusiasm, I figured I had the backing to go forward. Then I had to recruit, that's a lie. I hogtied 9 other men to join me in our very first meeting of Men's Wisdom Works. By the way, the name is another gift from another woman, Cindy, my wife. She came up with the name because I told her I wanted something that would represent that as we age, our wisdom grows for men. And also that we want to give back to this community through nonprofit efforts. And folks, we have done that. So the first meeting of Men's Wisdom Works occurred on October the 10th, 2009. If it was a harbinger of things to come, it looked like it was going to be a disaster. I brought these 9 men in. We had to introduce ourselves. It didn't go well. They all said they were only there because I made them come, with one exception. One man, very honestly, just looked, and this is a direct quote. He said, I'm only here because I didn't want Chuck to be alone. That's how we got started. Then we were telling about our work experiences, and one guy, Gene, then said this. When asked what he did, he said, I killed baby seals for a living. What? You kill baby seals? And then he fessed up. He said, well, actually, I work for a major oil company. But these days, and folks, this was around the BP oil spill. These days, he said, it's much easier for me to represent myself as killing baby seals than working for an oil company. I figured you guys would respect me more. But the real positive note from that day came from our oldest member, Albert. Albert was an old 89-year-old curmudgeon. He was bent in half from arthritis, and he was a real curmudgeon. He made, I don't know, he was like Mount Everest of curmudgeons. So he bent that crooked finger, and he looked at all of us with his squinty eyes, and he said, if this is going to work, you all better be effing authentic. Wow. And folks, those words actually became the watchwords for Men's Wisdom Works. So, let me tell you about what we do. We meet twice a month, 2 hours at a time, and we talk about personal issues. We open up from the heart. We start with a check-in, and after that, usually a topic can arise from the check-in. And if it doesn't, a facilitator or another group member will come up with an idea. Like, let me give you an example. How do you go from being a pip to a life of meaning? Pip, by the way, is a previously important person. That's who we are. Well, that's what we do. But what really brings me joy is the stories of the members and how we have grown since forming MWW. And by the way, there are 17 groups now, about 170 or so men. There's been as many as 21 groups, but some groups fade, some men leave, some men move, and frankly, some men pass away. So we're down to only 17 groups now, but they're really humming along. And it's what's happened with these men that brings me so much joy. These are not organ recitals, folks. We don't talk about our kidneys, our prostate, our blood sugar levels, maybe a little bit of that, but you should see the evolution of our members, both recreationally, intellectually, and spiritually. Here's some examples. There's a guy named Ed. His nickname is Steady Eddie. Ed and his parents immigrated from Nazi Germany when he was just 3 years old. He and his parents were the only members of his entire family to survive the Holocaust. Then Ed actually moved to Cincinnati. And remember the University of Cincinnati? Well, Ed attended the university, got a degree in engineering, and played on the University of Cincinnati Bearcats basketball team. This is just a few years before they won 2 national championships in 1961 and 1962. Well, then Ed started as an architectural firm up and down the East Coast, very successful, and he got bored about maybe 20 years into it, and he sold the business, went back to college, earned a PhD in psychology, and opened up shop here in Asheville where he treated the most difficult patients without ever charging a penny. So one day before a meeting, I see Ed and I approach him. I said, "Hey, Ed, how you doing?" "Pretty good. What'd you do today?" "Well, I was at Carrier Park and there was a pickup basketball game, so I asked if I could join. And they said, sure." "Ed, you play basketball? You're 85 years old." He said, "Yeah." I said, "How old were they?" He said, most of them were in their 20s, a couple were in their 30s. "Okay. Well, how'd you play?" "Well, I gotta tell you, I think I held up my own, but my driving reverse layup is gone." Ed. "Oh, remember that guy Gene I was telling you about? The guy that killed baby seals for a living? He also said he was a self-avowed couch potato. His routine, wake up, have breakfast, go to work, come back, have dinner, go to bed, rinse and repeat." And then, in 2010, he saw the movie The Way, starring Martin Sheen. It was a story about a father who lost his son, and I think his son was on the pilgrimage trail in Western Europe called El Camino de Santiago. Gene saw that movie, and he soon became the Forrest Gump of Men's Wisdom Works. He started walking and walking and walking. He never stopped. In fact, in 2011, he made his first trip to Western Europe to hike El Camino de Santiago. This man did it in 31 days. It's amazing. 31 days. He walked 500 miles. Well, we have some other interesting fellows as well. And one of them is named Bill. Bill, to me, is the Renaissance man of Renaissance men. He's a spiritual man. He's a farmer. He's as sensitive and intellectual as anyone I know. And Bill has had Parkinson's for 15 to 17, 18 years. He's been living with Parkinson's. Well, Bill and I decided to take a comedy class from a guy named Randy, who I'll tell you about a little bit later. And Bill and I took the class, and the graduating ceremony was we had to do our stand-up routine in front of 120 people. It was like, hey, man, come on, make me laugh. And you're feeling like you're naked in front of all these people. Well, I felt pretty confident. I think I'm a kind of a funny guy. I'm very comfortable on a stage, but Bill went first. I'm feeling pretty confident, but Bill's entire routine was on the comedy, the humor of living with Parkinson's. He killed. He got a at least 3 minute standing ovation, and I was one of those. But then I had to follow Bill. Well, suffice it to say, now I'm a storyteller. That should show you how well it went. Now I'm a storyteller. But we also have, I mentioned that guy Randy. Let me tell you about Randy and Nick. I would go to every first meeting of every new group. And by the way, I just numbered them because I'm pretty good with numbers. I can't remember names like lions and tigers and bears. So Randy's group was group 5. I went to their first meeting just to see how they worked. And Nick started by saying, "I'm Nick. I have 2 to 5 years to live because I have stage 4 terminal prostate cancer." Folks, I have seen every group start. I have never seen a group come together as quickly as group 5. Disclosing personal items was nothing for them after that. And in that group is also Randy. Now let me just show you the difference between Nick and Randy. Well, let me tell you the similarities first. They were both big, like 6'4", big guys, and they both loved to laugh. Other than that, though, they didn't seem at all alike on paper. Nick was Protestant from Connecticut. His family went to the same country club as the Joanne Woodward and Paul Newman. They had a summer home here in North Carolina. He went off to a private school and worked in corporate America. And then there's Randy. Randy, Jewish, from New York, from actually, I think it was Queens. And Randy didn't exactly, he went to Pace University. And what did he do? He taught special ed in the South Bronx in Harlem. It seemed like they had nothing in common, but through their group, these guys formed a friendship, and they were inseparable. Oh, and remember Betty? She became very good friends with Nick, and Randy's friend was Lori, and the 4 of them would get together. Well, it was about a month before Nick passed, and I went to visit him. I just said, "Nick, how are you doing?" "Oh, Chuck, I'm okay. I'm actually okay. I've got the best news. I'm going to die from anemia, not cancer. It's pain-free, and that's all I wanted." Folks, Nick never felt sorry for himself. In fact, he created a program at OLLI called The Gift of Time. The next session, I think, is the first couple weeks in March. Nick created this program so other people can get their life in order and give it to their loved ones before they go. That's Nick. There was another guy from that group, Doug, and one day Bill and I, remember Bill? We're in the hallway at OLLI and we're talking, and Doug comes up and he just taps me and said, "I want to thank you for saving my life." "What? I've done nothing. I'm not an EMT." He said, "No, but you created these groups, and my group saved my life." He explained that his wife, who he was deeply in love with, they were buddies, they played sports together, they learned together, they traveled together, and then she got Alzheimer's. When she got Alzheimer's, Doug started caring for her, but after more than 10 or 12 years, he started spiraling down. He told that to his group, and he said that his group gave him the inspiration to go on. And boy, did he go on. Within a year, he met Julia. And then, just 2019, Doug and Julia tied the knot. And I literally mean tied the knot, because they were married in Ireland at a Celtic ceremony where the big ritual is tying the knot. But there is one person whose story, to me, resonates for everything that Men's Wisdom Works is all about. His name was Larry. Larry was the facilitator for group 2. And he developed cancer in the first year, stage 4. After he died, there was a memorial service, and his wife, Meredith, said this at the memorial service. She said when she was visiting Larry one day, a nurse came up to her and very excitingly said, "Who are all these men? I've never seen this many men before at our hospice. What's going on?" And Meredith just smiled and said, "Those are Larry's brothers from his men's group." And folks, that's what we're all about. We are there for each other's families. We're there because we love each other and we want to be there for one another. So what have I learned? Well, let's see. First of all, good things can come from depression. You just have to wait. And second of all, because we do listen and we've listened to Albert's words and we invoke them every single time we're together, in fact, we've learned, because we are effing authentic, we've learned that indeed, men's wisdom truly works. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. I know a lot more about you now, and thank you very much for that. Our next teller is Larry Pearlman. You guys are in for a treat. Larry has been a professional teller in North Carolina since 2018, but he's always incorporated stories into his life while he's been an author, a public speaker, a workshop facilitator, an actor, a radio host, and he was director of field sales training for an international company. The most interesting thing I learned about Larry that I didn't know, but it makes sense to me now, is he's a minister. I give you Larry Pearlman. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. Those eyes reached out and touched my very soul. They were the kindest, most loving, most compassionate eyes I'd looked into since many years before that, when I had met the Dalai Lama. But when I looked down and read the name on the name tag, I couldn't believe my own eyes. Leo Baker? There's no way. I mean, I knew there is no way that those eyes belong to Leo Baker. Well, let me back up a little. How many of you have been to at least one high school reunion? Now, of course, I can't see your hands, but I'm assuming some people have their hands up. Well, in 40 years after I got out of high school, I had never gone to a high school reunion. I never had the slightest inkling of interest in going to a high school reunion. Now, I get it. I know what you're thinking, but I'm really not one of those people that had a horrible time in high school. And I'm sure you all know at least one, or maybe you are one, and they would never want to be reminded of their high school years. But that was not me. I enjoyed 1961 from 1965 in Hillside High School in Hillside, New Jersey. I had a good high school time. I did well in school. I liked my subjects. I liked all my teachers. I mean, there was Mr. Dimitropoulos. He was my math teacher senior year, and he introduced me to calculus. Now, you know, today I think calculus is in every high school curriculum, but back then it was not. This was an experimental course. I think the first one in all of New Jersey. And I got through it with the help of Mr. D. And I'll tell you what, I was so glad I took it, because my next year when I was a freshman in the engineering school at Rutgers University, having that class behind me let me slide right through. And history, my sophomore year, I had Mr. Stabler. He made history come alive. He took it out of the book. We learned things like how Woodrow Wilson had to make concessions in the Treaty of Versailles because he had flat feet. Bet you didn't know that. And that we have tomatoes in this country because Thomas Jefferson smuggled them out of Spain in a hollowed out cane when he was a minister to France. And speaking of history, there was Mr. Mazzella. He was my senior history teacher. The best teacher I ever had at any level of education. And I say that because he's the one that taught me to think deeply and think for myself, not just repeat back what the teacher says or what the books say. And Mr. Poley, junior year English, he lit my fire for American literature. Oh yeah, I can't forget Mrs. Lopez, freshman Spanish. She had just gotten here that year from Puerto Rico. She couldn't have been 4'11" in 3-inch heels. She was tiny. And the first day that it snowed, she looked out the window and she saw those flakes coming down. She had never seen snow. She got the whole class up. She said, we're going outside. We're doing the whole class outside. Didn't even let us get our coats. We're all out there thinking all we want to do is go back in. She's having the time of her life, just feeling the flakes hit her fingers and her face and even her tongue. Oh, wait a minute. I think I told you I liked all my teachers. Okay, I lied, because there was Mrs. Harmon. Yeah, Mrs. Harmon was my typing teacher. See, my sister Carol had persuaded me that I should take typing. And for that, I am forever grateful to her, because it really did make things so much easier when I was in college. And then, of course, when I got out of college and the computer age came, the transition to computers was so much easier if you knew how to type. So I am very glad I took typing class. But as far as liking my typing teacher, not so much. Now, to be fair to Mrs. Harmon, I really didn't give her much of a chance. I mean, Bobby Pastor sat next to me in that class, and all Bobby and I did was have fun in that class. We didn't really listen. We didn't pay attention to the rules, none of that. For those people who remember typewriters, you know, if you hit 2 or 3 keys at the same time, they jammed. Remember that? Well, Bobby and I would sit next to each other, and when we would take a typing test, if my keys jammed, I'd reach over and I'd pound on his keys to jam them, because I wasn't going to have him beat me. And of course, he did the same thing to me. And we would just laugh and have such a good time. And on one such occasion, Mrs. Harmon, she was not amused. And so we were sentenced to each write a 1,000-word essay. Well, I asked her, do you care what subject it's on? Do you care what format it is? She said, I don't care what you do, as long as it's at least 1,000 words. Well, I had a great time. I wrote a play. It was actually a parody on my typing class with a, let's say, a not so flattering description of the teacher, who I cleverly named Mrs. Pearlman. Yeah, that one got me a trip to the principal's office. Now, for those who are out there thinking what a bad boy I am, let me set you straight. That was the one and only time I ever got sent to the principal's office in 4 years of high school. So the fact of the matter is, high school was good for me. I enjoyed it. I really did. The reason I never went to a reunion, well, there was a small cadre of us who became really close in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and then into high school. And those were really all the people I cared about seeing. Well, I was the only one that moved away from the area. So every time I'd come back, I'd make a couple phone calls, and we'd all get together and have our own mini reunion. So I never really saw any reason whatsoever to go to a bigger high school reunion. Well, then I got the notice about our 40th reunion. And I found out that Eddie and Freddie and Patty and Joy and Nancy and Sharon were all going to be there. So then I thought, well, that'd be fun, and we could get our own table, and we'd have a ball. So sure enough, May 25th, 2005, found me in the Hanover Manor in East Hanover, New Jersey, at the registration table, filling out my form with Barbara Halper. Now, I was amazed because I thought I had gone back in time. Barbara Halper, she hadn't changed in 40 years. I swear she had the same hairdo that she had when we were in high school. There was not a wrinkle on her face. She was gorgeous. But I filled out the registration form, took my name tag, slapped it on my chest, and I walked through the door into the ballroom and saw those eyes. And then that name tag. Leo? There was no way that that name matched those eyes. Now, I mean, I knew that people could change. I mean, after all, for years, I had heard my uncles and my cousins, even my mother, talk about my father's horrible temper. I had never seen it from the time I was born. I never saw him lose it. So when I was in my 20s, I asked him about it. I said, Dad, everybody talks about this horrible temper you had, but I've never seen it. So what changed you? And he told me, your mother changed me. When we first got married, I liked to fight. She wouldn't fight. It's hard for one person to fight. I'd get real mad and I'd blow up, and she would say, Jack, when you want to talk, let me know. And she would walk away. And of course, eventually I'd calm down, and then I'd go find her and we'd talk things out, and it always worked out. And after about 2 years of that, I said to myself one day, why do I do that first part? It never goes anywhere. And he said, something just clicked with me, and I never lost my temper again. So because of that, I knew that people could change. But Leo Baker changing into those eyes, no, I couldn't even conceive of it. Okay, let me paint you a picture so I can put this in context for you. Okay. Think back to your high school days. Think back to that kid, that tough street bully that would walk down the hall and just ram into you for no reason, even if he didn't even know you. He'd knock the books out of your hands. He'd push kids down. He was always getting into fights. Unlike me, he was always in the principal's office. Well, I mean, when he wasn't suspended or just cutting school. You know, that kid that you knew for a fact would never make it to 30 years old without being in prison or in an early grave? You know that kid from your high school? Okay, if you've got that image in your mind, then you can understand my disconnect, because that kid in our high school was Leo Baker. And I'm looking into these eyes like the eyes of the Dalai Lama. Disconnect. Now, I don't know what I said to him, and I must have said something because I was standing there in front of him. So I'm sure we shook hands and I said something and he said something. I don't remember. I was in such shock. I went to my table, you know, with all my friends. I never went to talk to Leo the rest of the night. I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't get my mind around it. But then it haunted me for 2 months. It haunted me. How did that guy change that much? Or was I just wrong looking into his eyes? But I couldn't believe that. So when I got the letter from Barry Zins, who was our reunion guy, the guy that puts it together, got the letter from him giving the contacts and, the people who were there and all their contact information. I looked down the list and there he was, Leo Baker, phone number. I said, I got to call this guy. I have to. I got to know. And so I called him up and I got the courage, or maybe the right word is the chutzpah, to say, Leo, this is Larry Pearlman. I don't know if you remember me or not, but we just saw each other briefly 2 months ago at the reunion, the Hillside High reunion. And the last time I saw you before that was 40 years ago in the hallways of Hillside High, when you came down the hall and slammed into me, knocked my books on the ground, growled at me, meet me behind the Acme after school, I'm going to kick your ass. Well, I politely declined your invitation. And I don't think either one of us said another word to each other until 2 months ago. But Leo, when I saw you 2 months ago and I looked into your eyes, I just have to tell you, all I saw was kindness and love. And I've been thinking for 2 months, how did that guy that I knew in high school turn into this guy? And I just would like to hear your story. Well, I didn't know if he was going to say, you're crazy, or go to hell, or hang up on me. But he didn't do any of those things. He laughed. Yeah, he laughed. And then he told me his story. He said, Larry, you're right. When I was in high school, I was on the road to perdition, no doubt about it. What changed me? Well, there was 2 women, God, and what I would call just a quirk of fate that I can't explain. He said, you remember the guys I hung out with? Well, you probably saw me in those hallways drunk a lot. I drank a lot of alcohol. We all did. I can't count the number of days I was drunk in high school. But all those guys also got pretty deeply into drugs. And for a reason that I can't explain, I just didn't. I was the only one that didn't get into drugs. And I think that really helped me straighten myself out later on in life. Now, the 2 women, the first was my mother. So you knew me as this tough street kid, but at home, my mother ruled the roost. And every Sunday, she'd grab me by the ear and she'd drag my sorry ass to church and throw me down in a pew. I'd sit there and I'd sulk the whole time. As far as I was concerned, I wasn't listening. But something was going in, something went into my subconscious. And years later, I could actually hear the voice of God calling me to my life's work. Now, the second woman was my girlfriend. See, even if I couldn't see where I was headed in my life, she did. And she was not going to go down that path with me. So one night she just drew a line in the sand. She said, Leo, you can have your friends, or you can have me, but you can't have them both. So you make up your mind and you decide tonight. Then he said to me, Larry, one of the hardest things I ever did was to just walk away from my friends, my buddies, the guys I've been hanging out with for years. It hurt. But I knew it would hurt me a lot more to lose that woman because I was in love with her. Well, he said, here I am 40 years later, and I'm still married to that woman, and we have our own children. And I am now the pastor at a church to youth, to troubled youth. And I'll tell you something that I figured out. God put me on that path that I was on early in my life in high school, where you saw me as his tough bully. But God put me on that path for training. That's where I got my training for my life's work. Because now I work with these kids and they can't pull the wool over my eyes because I've walked in their shoes. I've walked down the path that they're walking down. I know exactly how their mind works. And I can help to steer their path to a different place. And then he said to me, thank you. Thank you for telling me that when you looked into my eyes, all you could see was loving kindness. Because the fact of the matter is, there is nothing in my heart these days but love and kindness and the desire to take kids that were like me and move them into a path where they can serve the world. Well, I'd just like to thank all of you for listening to this story about a person in my life that showed me that people can have a new beginning and serve. Thank you.
Larry, thank you very much. That was wonderful. Our next and our last teller is a very special lady to me. Donna Marie Todd is an award-winning storyteller. She's an author, she's a blogger, she's a podcaster, she's a TEDx speaker, and she is the president of Asheville Storytelling Circle. Her latest DVD, The Sheep Shearing Beautician and Other Festival Stories, it just won the Best in CD and DVD Recordings for Adults from the Storytelling World Awards. That's the Grammy that storytellers win. She's the author of Navigating Loss, a survival guide for the newly widowed. She podcasts at A Widow's Tale, where she shares stories and strategies when a woman has to live the unthinkable. Donna Marie is a nationally known retreat leader and performs for conferences and festivals all across the nation. Please give a big welcome to the Asheville Storytelling Circle's president and a good friend of mine, Donna Marie Todd.
Aw, thank you so much, Kathy Gordon. Thank you so very much. So we're here tonight to hear about new beginnings. So once upon a time, when I was 32 years old and living in the sweltering heat that is the Memphis Delta, I had a new beginning when I met my husband, Perrin. Very unusual name, familial. Perrin was tall, handsome, jet black hair, huge blue eyes, son of a preacher man. And his voice was as slow as molasses being poured over hot cornbread. And that man stole my heart all in one glance. Well, now, Perrin and I began to get very close. And as we got, close, he began to tell me that he was the firstborn son of the firstborn son of the firstborn son of the firstborn son, and that he expected to have a son after we were married. That was a problem. Because you see, due to a botched medical procedure, I wasn't able to have a child. And so I explained that to Perrin, that I was unable to conceive. And he just grinned this lopsided grin and said, "Well, baby, I guess I'll just have to pray about that then." I laughed, thinking that that was a joke. How little I understood that man. He was serious. And on the night of our honeymoon, he began praying for a son. Not a child, a son. It was kind of cute for the first 2 years or so. And then after that, it really began to feel like he was trying to shame me. And so on year 3, I took him to the doctor because I had the films from the hospital. And I figured that if I let her show him the film, and if she explained everything, perhaps hearing it from someone in a white coat, he would just get on board and give up the praying. Well, she put the films up on one of those, X-ray exam boards, and she explained everything to him, that I could not conceive. And he just grinned this lopsided grin at her and said, "Oh, I know all that, but I only need one son." Well, on the way home in the car, I told him I never wanted to hear him pray for a son again. And he just grinned at me again and winked and said, "Okay, baby, I won't let you hear me praying then." Well, he stopped praying out loud. At least that was a good thing. And I kind of forgot all about the child thing. We were very busy building a business and being a young married couple in a big city, And then about 7 years later or so, I felt really ill one morning. And the next morning, I felt pretty ill too. And then it went on like that for about a month. And I was convinced that I had cancer. So I went to the doctor and I told her what had been happening to me. And I said, "Listen, I totally expect the worst because I'm pretty sure that something is growing inside me." Well, they put me in one of those thin little gowns. They drew some blood, they took some urine, they left me sitting in that freezing exam room for what seemed like an hour. And then the doctor came in, and she and the nurse were nudging each other and winking. And she said, "You have a growth, all right. You're pregnant." What? I was pregnant? How could that be? And Perrin, he just started grinning. He was so happy. And the doctor interrupted that grin and she said, "Now listen, I can assure you, having seen her films, that this is an ectopic pregnancy. The fetus is trapped in her fallopian tubes, and I have already scheduled her for emergency surgery. I want you to drive to this address, and they're going to take an ultrasound of her tubes to figure out where we need to conduct the surgery." Well, on the way to this appointment, we were both crying. We were just crying for different reasons. He was crying because he thought he was going to have a son. And I was crying because I knew I was going to have emergency surgery. we got to the ultrasound facility and they put that jelly all over my belly and they began looking at my fallopian tubes. We could see them there on the screen. And the oddest thing was, my tubes were no longer gnarled and scarred like they had been. No, they were smooth. And there was no egg in those tubes. And so the sonographer went down a little bit below my belly button, and she began moving that device all around my tummy. And there floated into view a 10-week-old fetus sucking his thumb. And some 8 months later, I had another new beginning because I gave birth to the firstborn son of the firstborn son of the firstborn son of the firstborn son of the firstborn son. We had a son. Our child was a miracle of prayer. And I guess I don't need to tell you that he was the apple of his daddy's eye. Perrin loved our son so much. He would take him cycling with him. He would put him in this little thing called a bike train and hook him onto the back of his bicycle and take him all over the countryside. He would put him in a backpack when he was really little and take him running. Perrin did not have an ounce of fat on his 6'2" frame. He loved being in his body more than anyone I have ever known, and he was so proud of his son. Well, the years went by and our son started school. And then he got held up for his lunch money in kindergarten. And that's when we decided maybe it was time for a new beginning for our little family. Maybe we should leave the sweltering Delta that was Memphis, Tennessee. So we moved to the mountains of North Carolina. A new beginning for our little family. Tori had a great new school. Perrin had a brand new Rotary Club. He began mountain biking in the dark, wearing a miner's helmet with a light on it, cycling with guys half his age. We loved living in the mountains. I was able to pursue storytelling. We went through grade school, middle school, and then in high school, our son began his big scouting journey, the one that his dad more wanted him to do than anything else, and that was his journey to Eagle Scout. You see, Perrin was an Eagle Scout, as was his father, and he wanted Tori to be a third-generation Eagle, so he was his scoutmaster. Well, things were progressing very, very nicely. We were having such a great time in the mountains, and then came New Year's Day of January 2011. Now, ordinarily on New Year's Day, Perrin would be watching a bowl game somewhere because, let's face it, he was a Southern man, okay? But not this year. No, this year, Perrin told me that he wanted to vacuum the house and do the laundry. Now, this would have been an odd enough request from any man, but you see, Perrin was a wonderful husband. Don't get me wrong. He was a great father, a wonderful scoutmaster, good businessman, strong Rotarian. He just had this one teeny tiny fault. He was born in Alabama. So he didn't know how to do housework because it's against the law for men to do housework in Alabama. Now, he could do anything mechanical. I mean, he could take a vacuum cleaner apart and he could put it back together. He just couldn't plug it in and run it over the carpet. So when he said he was going to vacuum the house, I thought he had the flu and was feverish, or he'd had one too many of those local microbrew. But he handed me a glass of wine and told me to sit down and relax. And like a good Southern woman, I let my man have his way. Well, after he finished vacuuming the house, Then he said that we were going to go to bed at 10 o'clock at night. This was the year that we were not going to have to watch the director's cut of Lord of the Rings, surround sound with those orcs running around clubbing people. No. This was the year that we were going to go to bed early. I remember being so happy that we were going to bed at 10 o'clock at night that I sang while I brushed my teeth. Happy New Year to me. Happy New Year to me. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to me. Oh, I got some fine Southern loving that night, I'll tell you that. Fell asleep in his big, strong arms. And then about midnight, I woke up to a strange, strangling noise. And I said, honey, are you okay? But he didn't answer me. So I flipped on the light and I saw that he couldn't answer me because his tongue was turned upside down in his mouth and he was grabbing his throat with both hands. And I didn't know what was happening, but I knew it was way bigger than me. So I grabbed the phone and I dialed 911. And in minutes, the paramedics were there. Mission, this is Rescue 9. Do you copy? 10-4 Rescue 9. Yeah, we have a white male, 55, possible CVA. Do you copy? 10-4 Rescue 9. Transport hot. We'll be ready for you. When I got to the hospital, they sent the chaplain out to meet me. It's never a good sign. My son was with his grandmother, and they took me back to see my husband. And there he was, this 6'2" frame strapped to this table, tubes everywhere. And the doctor in charge, this man called a stroke neurologist, he took me by the shoulders and he said, Mrs. Todd, I am so sorry. Your husband is having a massive stroke. Our scans show a 5.5-inch clot lodged in his left carotid artery. And that clot has already started to break apart, and it's lodged in different places in his brain, cutting off oxygen. Mrs. Todd, I am not sure that he will live through the night or live through the procedure that we will need to use to dislodge the clot. But if he does, you need to understand that the man on that bed will not be the man that you knew at 10 o'clock tonight. When I told my son, our son, what was happening, another new beginning arrived. His father had prayed for him to be born for 7 years. And for 7 hours that night, our son prayed that his father would live to see his 16th birthday, which was about 5 weeks away. And because God hears prayers, and sometimes The answer is yes. My husband was able to make it home for our son's 16th birthday. Just barely. He was in the ICU, then a step-down unit, then rehab. Then we got to bring him home. But I had to puree or thicken everything that touched his lips because he could not swallow or speak correctly. I even had to puree our son's 16th birthday cake. And that was really, it was very frustrating. I was afraid. I was afraid that he would aspirate. I was afraid that I would feed him something and it wouldn't work out and he would die. And so I first started offering him baby food. You know, I got all these little organic jars of baby food. And so one night, first night I really fed him anything, I was eating Chinese and I gave him Gerber's potatoes and peas and chicken. I put it on a plate and I pushed it over to him and he just stared at it. He wouldn't touch it. And I said, honey, don't you want to eat anything? And he took his long fingers and he pushed that plate back over to me and he pointed at that smushed up baby food and he said, would you eat it? I said no. And I threw it all away. And then the next day I was at the grocery store and one of my neighbors was there and she was in the Valentine's section because Valentine's was coming right up. It was February. And she asked me how Perrin was. And I told her that life was really hard, that I had to puree or thicken everything. And I only had one blender and I was afraid I was going to kill him as it was. And she just looked at me and her eyes filled up with tears, but she didn't say anything. And then when I got home from the grocery store, there were 5 blenders formed into the shape of a heart sitting on my front porch, each one wearing a masking tape label with its owner's name. Sometimes new beginnings come with angels. Well, my husband fought his way through rehab. He learned how to walk again. He learned how to talk again. He learned how to eat again, but he never worked again. And on the night of my birthday, about 8 months later, we were standing in the kitchen and he wrapped his arms around me and he said, Donna Marie, I will always love you. I was a little taken aback. And I said, honey, I will always love you too. But those were the last words that I ever heard my husband say. Because after we went to bed, sometime that night, early the next morning, no one could tell for sure. It happened again. He had a second stroke. And this time, in spite of all the prayers, the answer was no. And so at age 55, I had another new beginning, that of widow. And that was 10 years ago. And a lot of things have happened since then. Our son, he graduated from UNCA with dual degrees, one in neuroscience, one in cellular molecular biology. And now he's headed to med school. He wants to go into neurology to help people like his daddy. It's his new beginning. And as for me, I founded A Widow's Tale, and I travel around telling stories, blogging, podcasting, leading retreats and conferences for people who are facing their own new beginnings. And over the course of my life, I've learned that new beginnings come in all kinds of shapes and sizes, don't they? I mean, there's weddings, there's the birth of babies, there's moving to a new place, there's starting a new job, there's retiring, like we've heard tonight. Then there's other kinds of new beginnings too, aren't there? There's illness and sometimes death. When it's death, you're not invited to be on that committee. Sometimes when change comes to us, and change is the only constant, the only thing that we can really control is how we react to our new beginnings. And that's my life work now, is helping people move through those moments of new beginnings. Thank you so much for coming tonight, and thank you for hearing our stories.
Wow, Donna Marie, that story gets me right here every time. Thank you. Everybody, I hope you've had a wonderful evening. I want to thank again Hannah Ferguel for being our technical director and advisor and getting us, all us people, knowing what we're doing. Catherine Frank, that made this possible, the executive director of OLLI. And everyone at OLLI, all of you who came and joined us, thank you. Chuck Fink, thank you for making this possible for us. And my group that's near to me, Asheville Storytelling Circle, a great big thank you to all of you. And our tellers, David Sharp, Chuck Fink, Larry Pearlman, and Donna Marie Todd. Let's give them one more applause.
And thank you, Kathy Gordon, for being our MC this evening.
Thank you.
And I want to let everyone know the chat is now open. So if you'd like to send a message to the tellers, we'll leave that open for a few minutes. And you're also welcome to unmute and clap if you like. If you're done, Kathy.
I just wanted to tell everyone, have a wonderful evening after this bright sunny day. We hadn't seen the sun in a good while, and it was very nice to see it today. Thank you.
Amen. If anyone wants to unmute at this and share something, you're welcome to. You should be able to do that as we kind of have an open lobby for a few minutes while everyone's stepping away. And the chat is open.
I have a question. I got here late, it's my own fault. Is this I see it's recorded. Are we going to be able to see it in full later?
Yes, so it is recording and it will be available. It will be not immediately available because the closed captioning that's required by UNC Asheville a bit of time, but we will be working towards that, and we'll send an email out. Are you an OLLI member?
I'm an OLLI member and a member of the Storytelling Circle.
Perfect. So you'll be well notified when it's available.
Thank you.
It'll be in the newsletter. Yep. Thank you. That was a wonderful mix of stories, y'all. Thank you so much for taking the time to share them with us. And I hope we can do it again sometime, maybe in person. But this has been a lovely virtual event. So thanks again to all of you.
Take care.
Can you hear me? This is Larry's brother speaking.
Yes, we can hear you. Hi.
Great. Well, I wanted to thank everybody tonight. There was a wonderful group of storytellers. I enjoyed it immensely. And my brother, I always hear stories from my brother that I never knew as we were growing up. Well, I like to listen to these storytelling stories. I get a history, something I really appreciate. And I just wanted to yell at him tonight because he didn't tell his sister to go listen. I had to call her up halfway through his story to let her know that he's storytelling. So you know where you are. You're on the wrong end of the stick, pal.
Well, all I can say is it's a good thing mom and dad still aren't alive, or boy, would I catch it.
You would really get it. And now you're gonna have to talk to Carol and let her know, and she's gonna let you know what she thinks too.
I'm very happy. I'm over here. I'm Larry's sister.
Oh, wow.
But I didn't find out until you were almost more than halfway through. So I got to hear you. I got to hear Donna Marie. You had me on bated breath waiting for the rest of your story, Donna Marie. Wonderful, really beautiful.
Well, Carol, we'll be sure to make sure Larry shares the link with you so that you can see it all in full when it's available.
Oh,
That
great.
would be great.
Thank you.
Very good. Good night to everybody.
All right.
Right.
Thank you all. I hope you have a nice evening and a good week. It's been a nice start to the week. I had a group of friends where we would have Monday night cookouts for years because we felt that Monday nights were kind of like, oh, the start of the week, and it gave us something to look forward to. So this has effectively created that meaningful start to the week. So thank you. When the video is captioned for you to share. So we really appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chuck and Larry and David and Kathy. Mwah. Love y'all so much. Thank you.
Love
Thank
you all.
Donna
Thank you so
Marie.
much.
All right.
See y'all.
Thank you, Kathy, for doing a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Enjoy your week.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right. Good night, everyone.
And
Good
who else had
Night.
all their siblings here?
I had a cousin here,
Oh, okay, there you go.
and I definitely had some friends from New England. I'm not sure who all was here because I could only see a small window. So
Yeah.
I'll find out more as it goes
Carol
on.
and Paul are here tonight, and I think one day Paul's gonna be a storyteller also.
Oh, yeah, I've got a
I've always
story.
been a storyteller.
And Marty, hi, Marty.
Hello.
We're having a real little reunion here.
Yeah, I can leave it up if y'all want to chat for a few minutes.
Wait a
There's no rush.
I can't, am I muted?
No, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
Oh, okay.
Are you good?
There's nothing muted about you, Marty.
Well, I hope that you all enjoyed seeing your brother on the big stage, and we'll make sure you get the full recording when it's available.
Thank you, Hannah.
Yeah,
It was
been
wonderful.
fun.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you all. Thank you, storytellers.
Hello out to Crystal, who I see her picture out there.
All right. Well, I'm gonna close this out and on their way. I hope you have a great evening and week.
Night all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good
Thank
night,
you.
everybody.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.